Welcome to Fan Reacts, where I react to your favorite content. Today we got Why is Invincible the best superhero media of the decade?
Invincible. A series that has really jumped into the public eye more of Season 3, at least I feel like it did. I've been a fan of the show since Season 1, but I feel like when Season 3 was airing, that shit was popular. Like, there were a lot more people talking about it than there ever were before. But then again, maybe that's just the AI over.
Yeah, it's been good since Season 1, though. Honestly, I didn't appreciate it as good when I watched it originally the first season. But when I rewatched it, though, I'm like, oh, this show great.
And read all of the main story comics right up until the end. That's got to mean something because I'm not much of a comic reader. This has got to be the only comic I've ever actually read.
Okay, so he's finished it?
Wait, no, I also read Marvel Zombies when I was a kid, completely out of order. I was terribly confused the whole time. I like it. I think it's pretty good. And it also won the poll I hosted on Patreon for what the next video will be about, so here we are.
I mean, it's more than pretty good, though.
We'll talk about Season 1 in this video.
I mean, it's definitely like...
in future videos, depending on how well this video does, perhaps sooner rather than later. So if I can...
Top 3 shows right now.
And all that, you know the spiel. You spend 8+ hours a day on this site. I know you. Don't worry, there won't be any spoilers for future seasons or the comics in this video.
I only got it behind One Piece and JJK.
Comics that these episodes cover, because the show actually expands on the early story quite a bit. There's a lot extra in the show, which I like a lot. There's a few differences and a couple improvements that the show makes, if you ask me. So if you're worried for comic spoilers for the part of the story that was already covered in the show, I guess if you're in that very certain kind of reptilian...
I'm show only.
Now is your chance to click off the video. Alright, enough preamble, let's amble. The big question that comes to mind when it comes to Invincible is why has it penetrated the zeitgeist on a deeper level than you'd expect? Well, the show being good as a start, that's a no-brainer. But it seems to have had some staying power, especially since the release of Season 3. You have classic memes such as, I'm Allening it, or... Are you sure? More on that later. And I think the answer to that question is that it's a pretty fresh take on the superhero genre.
I agree.
Something about it being released in 2003. Yeah, okay, but you know what I mean. The MCU has been chugging along for nearly 2 decades at this point. The DC Universe has only added onto the mountain of capes filling theater screening times. And aside from the big screen, there's a litany of animated superhero movies as well that range from incredible to so-so. And that comes from both the West and the East. The whole world, from where I'm sat, is still very much enthralled with the superhero genre, or at least the way these things keep getting pumped up by studios.
1,000%.
And despite all of this, I've never once seen the term superhero fatigue applied to...
I'd say it's the best superhero show of the decade. I wouldn't say superhero media, though. That would include the Infinity War movies, which I don't think is better than. That would include the Spider-Man movies. That would in terms of No Way Home, I don't think it's better than that.
I hear the sentiment for superheroes a lot that a hero is only as good as their villains. And while I get the sentiment behind that statement, the idea that a hero is measured by what they are based with.
Heroes only as good as their villains.
How their character matches up against the
I mean,
throw at them. That statement also has always seemed very reductive to me. If a hero was only
maybe not. I mean, I think you can, if you have a great villain, like that boosts you and your show, you know.
But I find the heroes that really stick with me are the characters that are more than just superheroes.
Right, like Aang's a great hero, and Ozan was trash. Like,
Mark Grayson is.
But then there's Azula and Zuko, and they were great villains. So you know, you definitely need them there to elevate. But
Mount Rushmore, another you have Alan showing up for a little misunderstanding. Another you have D.A. Sinclair abducting local college hunks to probably turn on the kids that gave him a hard time in high school. So the formula of the superhero cartoon is never lost in these episodes. There's always still a reason to suit up and go punch something. But these stories only ever really take up a small chunk of the episode they're in. The rest is about Mark going to school or worrying about college or dating Amber or trying to be like his dad or trying to familiarize himself with the everyday hero stuff. You know, and here's one thing I love about Invincible. Honestly, Eve is the only traditional hero. Like, everybody else is just somebody who, if they were in real life and they were heroes in real life, like, that's how they'd act. Like, Eve is the only one who's, like, super noble. Like, the rest of them, like I love Rex, but he's not, like, super noble. You know what I'm saying? Now, his sacrifice was noble, you know, sacrifice himself for his friends and everything, but, you know, I wouldn't say, like, how they act, how they talk is how, like, people do in, like, Marvel or DC. Like, that stereotype of hero, which is a good thing. Like, it's a different take, you know. A lot of those noble heroes can get boring. I mean, and it's less realistic. He can punch something to solve a problem. He's good. He can handle it. But he struggles to keep Amber interested and satisfied, and he's inwardly confused about his feelings towards Eve. He wants to live up to his father's example.
Bro, I hate Amber, so I'm glad that she got out of the way. Season 2. Come on now.
He can't just punch. He's all of us in a way. Like doing what we're good at.
He definitely could have punched Titan. He just was an idiot. He was still learning though. You know, it was the first season. But then he got fooled again season 3, so it was like...
Well, these concepts aren't new. The balancing of a normal life and a hero life all on the shoulders of a pretty down-to-earth, likable guy. I think one of the show's greatest...
I mean, I didn't like Mark until season 3, honestly. Blue Suit Mark is like that, you know, in terms of... I mean, he still loses, but in terms of, like, quality of character, I like Blue Suit Mark. But Yellow Suit Mark, nah.
The show had the benefit of a viewer being disarmed going in. Marvel isn't purely child-friendly nonsense, but it's also pretty tame violence and other graphic material-wise. If someone's gonna die, it's not because they're gonna be horribly dismembered or disemboweled.
I mean, it is PG-13.
With those expectations you have going in. The twist at the end of episode 1 of Omni-Man reverse jumping.
One of the best twists in history.
Obviously the hook to the entire show. Because before that, despite the show being a cute little enjoyable time about a down...
Why you kept rewinding that?
Spending time with his dad, who seems like a pretty good guy, it's all pretty dismissible from a first glance. It's all fun, but there isn't anything in there that you haven't seen or experienced before.
True.
It's on purpose. You know this show at this point. It doesn't mind showing you all the gory details. But
not at all. And that's one of the benefits of Invincible. Like, the gore is definitely one of the draws.
They say classic
for sure.
Lines like, no one will be left to stop us. One even gets his eye shot out, and the show purposely doesn't show it. It shows the reverse shot of the gun pointed at him, and then bang, and then cut to Mahler already holding his injured eye. Mark's training and first outings as a hero, despite people taking massive hits, characters are never injured too badly. All of this is on purpose to make a viewer drop their guards and make assumptions to what the feeling of the show actually is. That being a pretty average...
I never thought about it like that.
With pretty middling animation and pretty tame action. So when your expectations are set with those things in mind, when Nolan proceeds to paint the walls with the Guardian's blood, the twist hits all the harder. Also, a little
1,000%.
Red Rush,
that was a good analysis.
Red Rush mentions that his perception is just as fast as he is, right? So everything seems like it's in slow motion, which means that this slow motion scene where he's being killed isn't just in slow motion for the sake of the gore. This is the speed that he's experiencing it in.
Right.
Despite it actually probably only taking a split second for him to die. It took me a while to get that. I think that's
really I never actually thought about it like that.
Hamburger meat.
Wow.
The show turns to you and winks. It says, "Gotcha, dumbass." Suddenly, going into episode 2, you're struck with everything you thought you knew being flipped on its head. You thought you knew what the energy of the show was. You thought you knew where the story between Mark and
anybody who says Nolan's a better father than Goku is crazy.
But after that scene of Nolan embarrassing,
that gets me every time. That gets me every time I rewatch it.
What else it's going to do? How can you not wonder why this guy, who seemed like a pretty caring and stand-up dad, would do such a horrible thing? I think the first episode is an excellent 40-minute setup for a lot of the characters and the world the show is going to get into.
Bro, that's because, you know, this whole Justice League setup made him think like he was Superman. But he was really a Saiyan.
Stuff that made next to no sense to try to get cheap surprise value, and in turn it made a product a lot worse. Thank God we're mostly through that era.
I didn't see the last Star Wars movies. The new ones.
Spit in their face and tell them that they don't know shit about shit, which sets up one of the most interesting parts of the first season. Omni-Man being responsible for the death of the #1 superhero team on the planet after being on Earth for about 20 years and then afterwards continuing to play it up like he's still one of the planet's greatest protectors. Despite all of Mark's struggles and triumphs and the story of learning to use his powers and get a foothold in the superhero community, season 1 has this ongoing mystery plot line that the viewers and the characters have an imbalance of information on. They need to figure out who killed the Guardians, and we need to know why it was Nolan. It runs the whole season. The intrigue.
That's a fact. That's the underlying theme of the whole season.
It only has brief flashes of anger or moments of feeling greater than those around him. For some reason, killing what you would have to assume would have been his good friends. And that's a great mystery. Another element that adds on to the overall feeling of quality this writing has. It's not just that Mark feels real and like a real kid. It's just that everything feels real. And
I agree. Season 1 was great, but I think it gets better every season.
About superheroes. It's a story first. And it's hard to write Nolan off right away because of how the story story has written him. He seems like a genuinely good guy. He seems like a dad that wants his son to grow up to be strong and responsible. He seems to care deeply about his family.
He does seem like a lot of things. That's a fact.
So people tend to
He seemed like a lot of things. That's very true.
Okay, maybe he was brainwashed, but then when it becomes clear he wasn't, it's still easy to think that maybe he still had an unknowable...
I never thought he was brainwashed. I never thought that.
Accomplishes in a moment what I think all shows should strive to do. You agree with Mark both morally and emotionally when you were hit with the revelation of what Nolan's true purpose on Earth is. Mark even goes through the same thoughts that most people do. His dad is being controlled. He must have had a good reason. How can this be?
Right.
The man has seemed so good for so long. Character and audience member viewpoints and emotional states finally meet after a season of getting to know both Mark and Nolan, as all the information we had is made apparent to the characters.
Perfect finale.
Really strong writing. A great way to set up an emotional finale for not just Mark, but the person watching as well. This moment where Mark has to quickly come to terms with what he's being told and has to square up against Omni-Man, his father, a man he loves, a man he knows is far stronger than him, is when Mark truly becomes a hero. He stands up for what he believes is right.
I would say this is a top 3 episode behind
the man he's admired for his entire life. He lays it all on the line and pays dearly for it for the sake of the worst beating of his life, but constantly
top 3 or 4, definitely behind season 3, episode 7, the Invincible War, and episode 8, the fight with Conquest. You know, I'm trying to think about whether or not it's better than the fight with the tag team with Omni-Man, because that was fire.
Mark rises to be Earth's greatest hero, the son of that very villain who defied his alien heritage because at his heart, he is human. That connection Mark and Nolan share really is the heart of the first season, and why the show is still so interesting as it moves into the second. The idea that a sense of humanity makes...
I don't know if at that time it was his goal to be Earth's greatest hero, though, because he almost ain't even get to fight Omni-Man. You know, Eve had to convince him to even, like, follow her. When Cecil was like, y'all gotta go somewhere, like, he was kind of done with it, to be honest.
It complicates things. It complicates things in a few ways. If Mark was younger when he got his powers, he would have been still just a stupid kid, much easier to indoctrinate into the Viltrumite way of thinking and value system. But Mark gets his powers so late that he's nearly through high school. He's able to think critically, make his own decisions.
Exactly. I mean, he was pretty much grown at that point, like,
something he's horrified to be hearing.
And that's one of the issues too. Is like he only really considers him his son when he realizes that he has powers. Like, if he didn't get powers, would he have ever even told him?
Pushing him from the man that would beat his son to death for defying him and his people, just over the line to being the man that just can't bring himself to do it. I find myself thinking sometimes, Nolan is this thousands-of-year-old, planet-conquering demon. Who knows how many lives he's ended in this day, and a mere 20 years on Earth has changed him so much. Mark's a cool kid and all, and Debbie seems great, but even still, it's a bit of a hard pill to swallow when you look at it like that. His relationship with Debbie must be really something. Let's talk about her now. I think Debbie is a genius character to include in this story. She fills so many roles.
Yeah, I like Debbie.
Let's talk about that one with her husband first, though. I think it's so smart to have this charismatic, smart, morally upstanding woman be the match of this charismatic, smart, secretly morally deplorable main villain of the season. Their differences and thoughts on how Mark should be using his powers adds a really nice level of
it's interesting because she really taught him how to blend in on Earth. Like, her being such a nice person, you know.
Mark's powers, and when they've come about, drives an unspoken wedge between them, one that Nolan tries desperately to hide, but Debbie can't help but still feel. But it isn't just a relationship that we see crumble from being picturesque to hateful. The show takes the time to give the two moments to talk, to run off to Paris, to try to keep things fresh and exciting and fun. Despite not knowing...
They're gonna get back together, I'm already knowing.
The show does a really excellent job of making him seem human through Debbie's eyes. He's just a likable guy who's jacked, has a cool mustache, and the voice of J.K. Simmons. If Debbie didn't marry him, I would've. Shame we're only talking about season 1, because some of the best bits of Debbie and Nolan's lore comes from a talk from next season, but the greater broad strokes are still here. The chief reason that Nolan does get to the point of not being able to kill Mark is because of Debbie. Debbie instills the values of humanity into Nolan, shows this world genociding monster what it is to love deeply, to put stock in the little things, to appreciate the universe outside of his Vilcher might cause.
I love that take.
Someone else, or maybe another woman caught his eye a day earlier, maybe he wouldn't have changed as much as he did. Maybe that woman would agree with Nolan, sees the power that having a godlike husband who aims to conquer the planet would bring. And maybe their kid would be like all the Invincible variants we see later in the story. Debbie is the root reason that Nolan doesn't burn down the planet. Maybe Nolan could have actually seen another woman as a pet, like he claims to see Debbie. But Debbie has too strong of a character to truly be seen like that. She's fiery and can speak her mind. She stands up to her husband on multiple occasions and leaves him at a loss for words in moments. But she's also deeply emotionally intelligent. She speaks about her feelings and worries openly. She isn't afraid to be vulnerable or confused on the topics of her marriage falling apart or her son's safety and well-being. And on top of all this, she's still fun and she can crack a joke or be sarcastic or be casual and embarrassing about things in only the way that a mom can. It's great.
Yeah, I love that the characters in Invincible are real characters. You know? They're not just like archetypes.
Nolan's internal struggles would seem a lot weaker from a narrative sense because he would only have Mark to glean the value of humanity from. They make Debbie strikingly human because she has to be the human in the story. Who else did Nolan have when he first came to Earth, when you really think about it? Cecil? The dude that would probably sell his mother's ashes if it was for the greater good of the planet? He doesn't exactly seem warmth to me. The superhuman community?
He probably would.
I'm sure a lot of them are really great. I don't think they would capture what it is to be human, considering they're intrinsically more than just human. And being a superhero is mostly about fighting evil things and being strong, and that usually comes with a lot of ego. Hard to get to know someone deeply on that front, I would imagine. Past that, who? Supervillains and kaiju? Not much in the way of deep interpersonal relationships is all I'm saying. And Debbie's a great mom to Mark as well. There are multiple scenes where she consoles him, tell him what he's doing is right, or that he's just doing all right. And you have to think that Mark is only such a likable guy because he had this great upbringing. Because Debbie is just such a stand-up woman. I think giving her the plot of growing to not trust Nolan over the season and slowly putting it together with the help of art that he was the one that killed the Guardians is also a great choice. Because you can imagine it, right? The stay-at-home mom/wife that is fun and cool and whatever, but the show never really gave her much to do, right? She's just there to be there and ground the more important main characters.
Yeah, Deku's mom was... she was just there.
A lesser show would have done something like that, but Invincible...
They honestly ain't even have to put her in the story,
and I really appreciate that. It makes her a big player, which makes her...
Like, she didn't have to be past episode 1, Deku's mom.
Debbie is one of the things that I would say is a direct upgrade in season 1 from the comics. The comics really do treat her a lot like the character I just described a moment ago. Cool and fun to have on the panel, seems like a chill mom, but the story doesn't give her much to do before Nolan's turn. In fact, a lot of season 1 is told out of order from the comic. The lead up to Nolan's betrayal of his family isn't played as the information imbalance that it is in the show. Debbie grows into a fleshed out character as the comics move on, and she remains to be very important through the story, but she doesn't have the immediate depth that the show really takes the time to give her. I'm not a show truther, by the way, just because I watched it first. There are changes the show makes later on that I don't love, but I find it's mostly positive in season 1, purely based on the fact that it just gives you more story, more character. And that's good, because like most of the shows I would call my favorites, would I call Invincible one of my favorite shows at this point? I'm not sure. I like it pretty good, but give me some time to think on that. What was I saying? Right, like my favorite shows, my favorite part about this show is...
Invincible better than Avatar, though.
Tertiary characters are immediately real.
Like, Invincible is definitely the best cartoon ever.
But it's strange. I haven't been in high school in a while, but I find the dialogue between Mark and William to be pretty authentic feeling, like they're actually that age.
If I was to give like a top 3 cartoons, it would be Invincible, Avatar, then Teen Titans. The original, not Geo.
William isn't shown to be gay right off the bat in that. It doesn't happen until way later in the story that we rejoin him in a scene after he's been absent for a while, and it's just casually mentioned that he's in a relationship with Rick. I think it was a pretty alright decision to make him openly gay right away. No problem with that.
Oh, I heard he wasn't in the comics. Okay.
During that episode, but it does actually take away a plot he had in the books. He actually dated Eve for a little bit there after she found out Rex had cheated on her, but it didn't last long. Eve cited a lack of maturity from William's end to be the reason, and that's a shame because I think that could have been a cool story to look deeper into. Like,
I'm glad they didn't get together. Like, what? Nah. She can't get with him and then get with Mark. Like, not in a couple seasons. Come on now.
Just couldn't keep up with, you know. And then you could have done, actually William likes guys too, and I could have had a beat with him coming out maybe, and Mark being cool with it. It could have been nice.
No, I mean William's a decent character. I mean,
amount of screen time for what he is to the story. He's important to Mark, but he features in a lot of episodes already. In that D.A. Sinclair episode, he's in a lot. And it's not the Invincible and William show after all. So maybe they thought giving him all these extra story beats might overstuff the season with a little too much William. I get it. I still think he's another great grounding device for Mark when Debbie isn't around. Often, in fact, he chump checks Mark for being immature in his normal life. Tells him to grow up or try harder with Amber. I think William is an important little piece of the show. He's She's the tether to Mark's purely normal human life, and without him,
I
Mark
agree.
could have moved on and felt a little bit too detached from that angle. So I'm glad he's here. Speaking of Amber, though, man, the internet does not like this girl.
Because she's trash. The worst superhero. Wait, not the worst superhero girlfriend ever. Because, you know, Mary Jane from Spider-Man's worse.
I'm sure some of you have experienced the idea. Or
you know, I mean, there's a couple ones that are bad, but she's like top 5 worst.
Some of them get in relationships with people that they aren't really all that compatible with. They don't really have the same interests at all, but they're young and stupid, and being in a relationship to start out feels really good. So, you know, fuck it, right? And that's how Mark and Amber's relationship feels to me.
Oh my gosh, it sounds like he coping, bro.
See if it works and staying in it because, I mean, sure, let's keep going. Why not? It just feels real to me for that age group. Okay, on to Amber as a character now. I've seen a ton of hate for this character in season 1 and even a little bit in season 2, but most
understandably
from the middle to back half of the season, Amber is here to really put pressure on Mark. That's the point. That's why she's around story-wise. Mark wants to have it all. He wants to be just like his superhero dad, but he also wants to just be a regular guy with a cool girlfriend that he loves. It's a bit of a miniaturized version of Nolan's conflict.
I wouldn't say she's cool.
From a different angle. Nolan thinks that he knows that he's still loyal to Viltrum and thinks that it's tragic this will ruin his relationship with Debbie and potentially Mark, but it's something he feels he has to do. Mark wants to be just like his dad, but a lot of the time he doesn't see the magnitude of the importance of his hero work over his social life. He realizes that
he sounds like an Omni-Man fan too.
Other life as well. He struggles to make the
you know, Omni-Man's kind of growing on me, but after season 1, he did like piss me off.
Bailing on her for an hour, but they do well enough. And as Mark continues to flake on her and be distant and weird, she naturally gets more and more annoyed that her boyfriend isn't being her boyfriend. I don't think that's too unreasonable, personally. I think most of the hate towards the character...
Bro, she figured out he was a superhero, though.
He was a superhero and doesn't give him a pass for all his behavior because of it. I get that sentiment more, and her blowing up at him over it after the incident at the college doesn't read super well to me either. Because
it reads horribly.
Before this, and then he
left to save you.
And then reappear in costume.
Dang, bro.
Saved everyone. What about that interaction put you over the tipping point of being really angry? You
exactly.
He's keeping this from you for months, and he's not ready to tell you, and you're acting pretty chill and all lovey-dovey while he traipses around campus. So
exactly.
Now, but then he bails on you so he can go get on costume so he can effectively save everyone.
Then right.
You're mad at this made-up version of him you have in your head where he isn't a superhero and just abandoned you in a moment of extreme danger. Until he finally does reveal his alter ego to you, which you tell him you already know, and you're actually upset with him for being dishonest about it this entire time.
She's just toxic.
Disconnect somewhere in that line of logic. Something ain't adding up. I think that's where a lot of the distaste for this character comes from. That one interaction that doesn't...
1,000%. Like, she was, like, okay before that, but when she found out, I'm like, I'm done with you, bro. Like, I'm done.
I don't know where I sit on that thought, actually.
It's like, oh, you knew the whole time? Then what you tripping for?
But I also think Amber still being mad and disappointed with him is pretty valid, especially since she knew she was purposely being kept out of the loop. What do you guys think? That is Amber.
I completely disagree. That's what I think.
Pressure on Mark to make things harder from a different, more human angle. And I think the story pulls it off really well. I know people wanted her to be more understanding and doting or whatever, but we get a lot of that in season 2, so much so that I think they overtuned it a bit. But I guess that's
no, they didn't. No, they didn't, bro. She just acted like a normal girlfriend in season 2. Keep it real.
Natural match, and it feels a bit frustrating to have them just orbit around.
Like a normal girlfriend who knows, like, that, you know, he's a superhero. Like, come on now. She's why my 2 cartoon characters aren't in love. This is unacceptable. The online Amber hate, while vitriolic, isn't entirely unfounded, I wouldn't say. She's there to be a hurdle for Mark at basically all times. So is it surprising that the more vocal parts of the online sphere find ways to treat her like she's the Antichrist? No, surprising is not the word. I think she's another character along this long list. The story executes what it's going for with her very well. Speaking of our more obvious choice for a love interest, another flawless segue, Overanalyzing Avatar, pat yourself on the back for that one. Eve is the opposite to Amber. Eve is a boon to right, a perfect character, best character in the show.
And in the superhero antics as well. Their friendship seems really genuine, and Eve represents an important angle of superhero to Mark. That being making the difference is the most important part.
1,000%. That's why I say that she is the only traditional hero in the show. The Marvel DC type of hero.
Eve is useful in a fight and all. She's competent. But as the season goes on, Eve can't shake the feeling that because of her unique skill set, she might actually be limiting herself by just using her powers to dress up in a costume and go and fight bad guys.
It makes you think.
Schools or orphanages.
And guess what? She's the strongest hero on Earth. Facts. She's stronger than Mark.
Eve, the the superhero was inspired by the good nature of Amber, a normal person who just likes to do good for the sake of doing good. Seriously, great stuff. This is to juxtapose Mark's more commonplace view on superheroes, where the best ones just beat the strongest bad guys, like his dad does. And to be fair, punching really hard is all Mark really has in his wheelhouse, so I get it. But I still think it's really useful from a narrative perspective to have all these different kinds of do-gooding present and thoughts about it in the story on deeper levels to characters that it matters to, like Eve.
I definitely agree.
Mark later sees himself inspired by Eve, even though Amber has been right in front of him this whole time, because it's a bit easier when one of them's your co-worker. All these characters come together to put Mark in interesting emotional states before and after whatever Cecil calls him up to do. Eve, just like a lot of the other characters in this show, really doesn't get a huge spotlight in this first season, but the episodes do find a way to fit in enough about her relationship with Rex and her parents so that when we do revisit this stuff on a deeper level in later seasons, it doesn't feel out of nowhere. The more I think about shows and write about shows, the more I come to accept that immediate, blunt, and over-the-top characterization is really the best way to introduce a character that's going to be important or go on a noticeable arc. Or maybe it just might be the best way to introduce a character, period. Hit the viewer directly in the face with what that character's main character trait is, so they have a crystal clear picture in their mind on what they're about and how they will likely interact with the other characters. And then build outward from there, show their more nuanced sides as you go on. I think a lot of characters...
I disagree with that concept. You don't have to off-rip show a bunch of archetype, like, personality traits. Like, I don't agree with that.
Get all that across about them in their first couple of scenes doesn't actually accomplish any of that.
Like, you can even just show a little bit, at first. And then, we get to know the characters more. But to be like, oh, well, we gotta have them act like a super hyper and stuff off rip, like, and just act like... And then, okay, the more time we spend with them, oh, well, they're actually a deep character. Nah. I mean, there's different ways you can play it. I mean, it's all about being creative.
It's right off the bat. And if you have a brand in your head, you're like, this guy is insufferable. Fuck this guy. Cecil, though, I think is the one exception to this rule in this show, because I don't think any of his traits really hit you in the face right away, because he's just a more subtle character. He's also one of my favorite characters. He just has a very unique feel. Like,
I don't think they did that with Adam. They didn't do that with her. Now, they did do it with Rex, and I love Rex, but, like, there's a lot of characters they didn't do that with. Like, I just don't agree with that concept.
But he's also a pretty likable guy. Walton Goggins gives him a bunch of personality with his voice performance. This clearly really intelligent guy with a hell of a mean streak for the people that have it coming, even the people in his employ, like the new Guardians, who can be a bit cooler-headed and have a soft spot for people when they're down or need to do something that Cecil knows is necessary.
I do not mess with Cecil.
All wrapped up in this sort of slick-talking vocabulary.
I used to be neutral on Cecil in, like, the first, like, first season, first 2 seasons, pretty much.
If he spoke super professionally all the time,
but, like, when he started to blame Mark for stuff, like, I was, like, in the second season about Omni-Man, I was like, come on, bro. And then in the beginning of season 3, how he violated, nah. Putting the thing in his ear and then doing way too much. When Mark just showed up and wanted to have a conversation, that was ridiculous.
Especially in season 1, all she does is die, fuck Rex, and die. The second biggest
duplicates horrible.
Gotta be the robot plot, where he is sad, becomes Rex, and dies. And it's played as yet another mystery story right up until the second last.
Yeah, Robot's trash too. 1000%.
Rushmore falling apart because of an old man using earthquake gloves is actually really played as a slow burn mystery to start out. Robot's humanity, despite being in a robotic form, is what turns out to
the horrible trio is the Immortal, Duplicate, and Robot.
I like that why he feels a connection to Monster Girl is because he sees himself in her a bit.
Cecil at least has, like, some defense, like, for some of his actions, but those 3, oh my gosh, I hate them.
Not looking like how he actually feels he is. Monster Girl, he sees as a kindred spirit, so it's sort of a nice thought that he would make.
Bro, he stole Rex's body and his name.
He would experience her way of life as well. And of course, the idea that if he fixes her problem, they would be the same age physically, and that would work out just gangbusters for him. Lovely little side effect of the thoughtfulness, wasn't it, Rudolph? It was a really interesting choice to play this as if Robot was the sinister mastermind in the background, doing some real sideways shit and maybe planning something really not good for almost the whole season. It makes for a nice little twist reveal when he shows up to complete his deal with the Maulers, and he's just like, no, I just want to be able to, like, breathe oxygen. It turns the mystery plot on its head once again, where you naturally assume this inhuman machine is doing...
Bro, and then the Invincible crew, the Guardians, just got over it. Like, he told them everything, and they just, like, accepted it. because of the timing. It was right before the Omni-Man fight.
There was no good reason. He's just as evil as you were dreading. Instead, this reveal is a positive one from an angle you would assumed was a negative one. As I type about all these characters, they're all just so immediately likable. Okay, they all fit.
I don't agree with like this big duality between, you know, Robot not being evil and then Omni-Man being evil. I mean, the Robot stuff wasn't nearly as much focus, and he don't even got that many fans like that to be like I don't agree.
Aren't a great addition. I think the villains in this show are pretty much never a miss, at least in this season. Doc Seismic, Tyson,
is Battle Beast even a villain?
Twins. I think they're all great and a ton of fun. It's just when I think about this show, they aren't the characters that my brain immediately jumps to as, wow, they're my favorites. The Muller twins get the biggest spotlight, and I think that's great because they're joke and dynamic with each other.
I mean, my favorite villain is
them and the robot plot.
Angstrom.
One of the big parts of
I definitely mess with Angstrom.
From the season from the comics. They were introduced very early on.
The Maulers are good too, though.
They come back and do the work for Rudy.
They're like the best weak villains.
Scientific biological transmogrification, but it takes place later in the story after the Omni-Man turncoat reveal. It's one of those things that I think enhances the early story once again, because all this intrigue and different.
I heard in the comics, like the first time Invincible bled was against Omni-Man. Like that would have hit way different. Like imagine going through the whole season he never bled, and then in the Omni-Man fight, like you see blood coming down his nose, like that would be crazy. Like that would hit different, especially for him to get violated as much as he did.
Great, but I hear people describe a concept like it had just hit their dog with a truck and in the same breath call it mid. I speak on this disconnection in logic to the newfangled slang because there's a disconnect in my own logic when it comes to the animation in this show. I, of course, love when animation looks cool. I like when it looks fluid and carefully crafted and detailed and weighty. Of course I love that. Everyone loves that. And this show does receive some admittedly well-deserved flack sometimes for the animation just being PNGs that get slid across the screen or made.
I mean, for a regular cartoon, it's not that. You know,
and I agree with you that
but it's just like when you start to compare Invincible to anime, and then it's just like, okay, well, Invincible isn't, the animation isn't better than anime that came out 10 years ago. You know, like, I mean, SAO has better, or Sword Art Online has better animation than, you know, Invincible. You know, I think it's just when you start to like go over the top and be like, oh, okay, Invincible's better than anime, you know, and then it's like, well, I mean, well, what about the animation?
It's whatever to me. The animation is really strong where it counts, and that's what's really important to me.
I don't agree with that either. But season 3, it did a good job. Like in the final fight with Conquest, it was the best animation I think we've seen.
But in the big moments where the animation needs to show up, it does. It's not like it's horribly cheap looking all the time. Most of these limited animation shots are quick in between shots.
Well, this dude's a fan of Avatar, so I'm sure it looks great to him.
Guilty about the limited animation stuff. I'll keep an eye out for it in the future videos. I do have my own problems with the show, though there are a few. I think the biggest miss in the first season for me was the demon detective stuff. I just don't really know why any of this was in here. He starts Debbie off and
I agree. That was unnecessary.
She could have easily caught on in some different way.
1,000%.
Back to Hell reads as pretty out of character. This is Cecil, after all. A guy who would probably actually make a deal with the actual devil to keep people safe. Sure, he didn't want Dark Blood going public with the fact that it was Nolan who killed the Guardians.
Man, he wanted to do his own investigating. I didn't blame Cecil for that. He told him to back down, and he didn't back down, so he had to get rid of him. It is what it is. Like I said, I didn't have a low impression on Cecil until really early season 2 is when I started to not like him a little bit. But really season 3 is when I was like, bro, I'm done with Cecil.
But this show is usually really good at setting up stuff for later while also being a really fun watch right
now. I liked how he tried to fix things with Mark at the end though, so, you know, I mean, he could end up growing on me. But that decision to keep Conquest alive made no sense.
I heard once the people didn't like the original Guardians being killed immediately to start the show, but I can't get behind that kind of thinking at all. Killing the Guardians was genius.
1,000%. It was genius.
Heroes with characters you can't make those instant assumptions about and that are interesting. And the show probably wouldn't be as popular today as it is without that Omni-Man going buck wild on them scene. Let's finally
1,000%.
talking about that last fight. The twinkling star atop the Christmas tree. The meatball atop your spaghetti. The cut to the title card in the middle. What a way to end a season. Awesome animation and ideas for set pieces within the fight
That
itself.
scene
This fight
was
has
crazy.
moments, and that's what an animated fight scene needs to be memorable. There could be a ton of punching back and forth, guys flying around at super speed and battering each other, and I love that, and there is a ton of that in this fight. But what this show does so well with its big end-of-season fights is that it has those moments. And a lot of them are original moments to the show. This fight lasts basically 20 minutes of uninterrupted screen time. To have enough material to glean out of that in a comic, that'd have to be like 5 issues of just insane dynamic fight drawing. The fight in the comic touches on the broad strokes, but like, okay, here's an example. The most iconic moment in the fight from the show has to be when Mark is held in place while the moving subway makes a blender of...
No, the most iconic is Omni-Man beating the crap out of him at the end. That's the most iconic, by far.
Everything. The sound design, the impact of both Nolan's punches, and the impact on Mark mentally to not only have this world view of his collapse around him, but also have buildings literally collapse around him and kill hundreds because he can't stop his father. And holy fuck, I know J.K. Simmons and Stephen Ewan are both great and accomplished voice actors, both core alumni, but wow, they really knock it out of the park in these roles, in these scenes. Just the range of grim compliance to visceral anger in J.K.'s delivery, the horrified sadness to punch-drunk belligerence and standing up for what he thinks is right.
What will you have after 1,000 years?
Exactly what I look for in a fight from a storytelling perspective.
I still
The dialogue
have
isn't
you.
superfluous. It doesn't retread
Perfect
stuff we already
writing.
know. We get revelations on Nolan's outlook. This is a fight, but it's still moving the story forward. We learn things as we also get the visual spectacle. It's just the right level of dialogue to fighting to me as well. It's not overstuffed. The dialogue is important, but it's still a fight at the end of the day.
Was he
It's
dissing
the
My Hero there?
course of the entire series. We want to see the battle, so the battle still takes center stage. And then it's over. Mark beaten nearly to death, and Nolan unable...
I mean, I agree this fight was better
I don't know
than
if this is a contentious moment,
Deku
but on my
versus
first
Kachon,
watch, I
but,
didn't like the flashback to the baseball
still,
game. I thought it
wasn't a bad
corny,
fight.
But now I can't imagine not liking it. I think it's a great addition to the comic as well. It captures the feelings Nolan is trying to fight off in that moment. The connections he's trying desperately to tell himself aren't as strong as they are. This show is about...
Yeah, I thought that flashback was perfect.
It is about aliens punching each other through buildings. Well, it turned out I had a lot to say about Invincible, and this is only season 1. I think its greatest strengths are making really solid, fleshed-out, human-feeling characters and creating stakes based around what those
human-feeling characters. That's what I was saying. I completely agree with this dude.
Well, the show never forgets the framing that it's in, but when it comes down to it, these people are why the show has the staying power it does. Animated spectacle only enhances what the show can make you feel through its writing, and the incredible voice cast can make you feel through their...
Hey man, we're not watching for the animation, I'll tell you that.
Coming-of-age story tainted
We're
by
not
a dark
watching for the
curve
animation.
I've ever seen coming. Mark's journey this season, for 90% of it, is wanting to emulate his father, be as great as he is. But as the season closes out, being anything like his dad is something he has to worry about going forward. Something he's afraid other people will think of him. He is the war between his mother and father's mindsets personified now, here at the end of the season. I think that's an amazing
I
way
agree.
to close the season out on. A character having worked to become something, only to find that that thing is something he detests. Something he's afraid he could become, or even worse, already is. How could you not want to watch season 2?
Invincible is definitely a top tier show. I agree with a lot of his points outside of the Amber stuff. He also sounds like an Omni-Man fan too. I get why people like Omni-Man. I can't rock with his decision at the end of season 1. He's slowly growing on me. He didn't really give Mark really no slack for his losses or his flaws as a character. Season 1 is about him trying to step into the hero role and even deciding whether he wants to be a hero. And that duality with what's going on in Nolan's head, it's like Mark trying to be a hero and then Omni-Man regressing from being a hero back to being a villain. When they're at those 2 points, that's when they clash.